I'm Chris McDonough, a retired homicide detective. I've interviewed thousands of people, from serial killers to ministers. Welcome to the interview room. Hey, welcome everybody to the interview room. I hope you enjoyed that. That's part one, by the way. Much more to come. I appreciate everybody being here tonight, and we've got a lot to talk about. I want to add, I have a very special guest with us tonight, and I'm going to add her right away because I just see she came in. There she is. Dr. Amy Salerno. Welcome back, Dr. Salerno. How are you?
Fine, actually.
No,
Salerno.
I know, what an interesting time for sure.
Yes.
But I'm so grateful for you. And so let me tell folks a little bit about you real fast.
Oh, okay.
And then we're going to dive into the nuts and bolts of some of the things that I'm discovering out here as a whole.
Okay.
So Dr. Salerno is a physician, site led for Zufall Health Centers in Hackettstown, New Jersey. Is that right?
Yes, Hackettstown, New Jersey. Yes.
Okay. There you go. You oversee the care of the medical vulnerable communities, migrant farm workers, unaccompanied minors from Guatemala, Honduras. Your patients include children, adolescents, and adults with developmental disabilities and chronic psychiatric illnesses. Previous Dr. Salerno practice obstetrics?
Yes. Family medicine is from the womb to the tomb. I've gotten rid of the womb part now. It got too exhausting.
Yeah, and psychiatry with the Spanish-speaking communities of Providence, Rhode Island, and Mount Kisco, New York. She has spent a lot of time in Latin America and the Caribbean in medical facilities as a medical missionary. She believes her most important role today, though, is a mom of two beautiful daughters, Francesca Marie and Dorsey Camelia, both of whom arrived from Guatemala as newborns.
Yes.
Wow, greatest job. Well, boy, did you have a chance to sit in and as we talked with Hunter there?
Absolutely, and I took copious notes.
Okay. Wonderful.
And my daughter Francesca, by the way, Francesca just gave the hi Chris sign, and Francesca wrote
Hi, Francesca.
one note in big writing to me: "Who and where is John?"
Yeah, I know, right? I know exactly. So, boy, we've got a lot to cover. First of all, I want to give a couple of things right up front. The information told to me during that interview, I made sure that all of that was reported by Hunter to TBI, which, according to him, it was accomplished. And we had permission to speak with him, as you could tell, with his mother, who's sitting there. And the other woman there is Allison's mother. So that's Hunter's great-great-grandmother. And if you think about what just took place, he's 15 years old, and he also is diagnosed ADHD. So his speech sometimes is a little bit slower, yet his mind, he has a really interesting memory track. And so what I want to do is kind of get some of your takeaway from your position and your expertise as not only, in the psychiatric side of things, but from a physician's position on a couple of things,
Sure.
a couple of scenarios. So I see this situation, and by the way, I am here in the town. I'm going to be here. Part 2 is coming tomorrow. I went to all the places that he level set, that he gave us. And I interviewed some of the clerks, and one of the clerks wasn't there, who actually remembered mom coming in and buying the items. And this was at the hippie house. And so the things that he mentioned, i.e. the timeline, and I'm going to show that timeline tomorrow, because we broke it down specifically right from where the swimming hole is, as you can see behind me, to each of the places where he said that they went post swimming hole. So there's a couple of things that stood out pretty quickly to me. And one of them, a couple of theories. And then I want to hear your insight. So the first theory is, okay, could this be a water incident? And then at some point, it just goes, off the rails, right? I.e., somebody hides her if she's not with us today. Okay. The second one is a lot of the story. Some of it's not lining up in totality, which is obvious. This is still a very fluid investigation. So a couple of names were brought up during that interview, and I bleeped them out on purpose because I felt that they would compromise the integrity of the investigation, allowing law enforcement to do their thing. So if this is a situation where there is another person involved, okay, then I think I would put that on the table potentially as either a family member, a very close, somebody close to the family. Okay. And one of the most unusual things that struck me on this was Hunter said that Don had called while they were in line at Walgreens.
Yeah, the first time they were in line.
The first time they were in line, right. Now, what's odd about that is, remember, Candace and Summer and Hunter and her mom are all together at the pool, at the swimming hole, right?
Yeah.
The boys were supposed to be with Don at work. Number one. However, when Candace gets home with Summer, the boys are there. Don said he was at work when Summer disappeared. So how do the boys, in my mind, get from at Don's place of business to the house? And if in fact that phone call was made, who's with the boys if Don goes back to work? And why are you calling to say, hey, there's some dude on the property here? And, so we, in my business, right, in the Cold Case Foundation and the other things that we do, we call that DLR. Does not look right. Okay, so that said, now, you are, in my opinion, an amazing professional and a very wise and smart woman and doctor.
Well, thank you.
I want you to kind of guide us along here on, let's talk the first couple of medical issues, and then let's talk about Summer and some of the observations you've made from a medical position. Okay. And what I want to ask the chat, and then we're going to kick off here. I want to first of all thank all of our mods for being here, because we can't do this without you. Miss Sophia, Maui Girl, Mimi J2, Crystal G, Melissa Hart, and Four Sons Mom. We absolutely adore you. Thank you for being a part of this. If you're new to this channel, we've got the best mods I think, and I know every channel has the best mods, but we have the best mods. Okay. They're really, really good. With that said, I want you, if you're here for the first time, don't worry about memberships. Just be here for summer.
Right.
Just be here for summer. Okay. And that means let's keep the chat classy so our mods don't have to work overtime. Okay. This is about this little girl. And so let's have a conversation. So Doc, I'm going to tee it up and ask you, and then I'm going to listen. Tell me what you're thinking and what your observations, where you want to go.
Well, okay. I think there's a story within a story. Probably there's a story within a story within a story. But I think notes. Oh, you're taking notes. Well, the first thing I want to comment on it is that I was not at all surprised. I want to talk about the story that we just looked at, aside from the summer story. And that is that Hunter, watching him for almost 50 minutes, I am not at all surprised to hear that he is ADHD for several reasons, fidgety, but also I don't know if anybody really noticed, but there were times he did a lot of yawning. So he would be talking and then he would go, oh. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
I don't know if people did, but that's pretty common in ADHD, especially if a person, whether it's a young adult, a child, is medicated on a stimulant medication, and then they haven't been taking it for a few days. I don't know him, and I don't pretend to know him. However, I am not at all surprised to hear that he is ADHD. And the manner in which he spoke and speaks, and what I call the cadence of his speech, to me, is very rather typical of kids with ADHD. And I just want to say my gut feeling is that this young man was being authentic in his best ability to recall what he could of a very complex morning and afternoon. I mean, they were going hither, thither, and yon. So, and there were a lot of odd things like the phone call from Don, etc. So I did want to congratulate you on your interview, and that because I think you're such a person of integrity and you're such an easy person to speak with, I think this young man was able to, tell his truth the best that he could do it, being at the tender age of 15.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And, I agree with you about him, where he was just, I think when I first talked to him and first met him, he's just been getting steamrolled in social media to the point where he's trying to, deal with not only being in the middle of, obviously an international investigation, but he's also trying to process, what that means by every word that comes out of his mouth. So, and I've been in a lot of these high profile cases where, it's just Looney Tunes. And then we add the social media dynamic. It's pretty easy, pretty quickly for a young man with a deficiency, internally to spiral pretty quickly. And I think that's what happened to him. And so I will tell you, I'm 80-20 on, the clarity on, I think there's still more, but he does not know how to present that yet. Okay. And hopefully he's presented it to TBI and the FBI, because I know they've interviewed him 3 separate times.
And I'm looking at chat, Chris, right now, and it's going pretty quickly, and I read very slowly. But I see that several people made excellent points. Yawning could be a way to deflect if you're lying. It's true. Yawning could be you're just frankly exhausted. And teenagers, I don't know what time of day by the way, what time of day did you interview him?
That was yesterday afternoon at 6 o'clock.
In the PM.
So, yeah.
Because teenagers in the summer especially tend to, if you had said it was 11 a.m., I would have been like, of course he's yawning. So, but I think the fact that he was able to tell you that he did drink and ask actually for the twisted tea, that he did take, from what I understood, at least one vape from her.
Two.
I think all of those are forthcoming pieces of information. I just saw in the chat somebody mentioned that the whole milk thing was odd, and it is odd. I mean, was she in the middle? Was the milk in the middle? Did he put it? But who knows? I mean, I don't think that necessarily means he's lying. It's just hard to maybe for him to remember. I'm not sure I could put a wager on that.
Yeah, the milk situation is pretty interesting, right? Where we have the picture of her leaning against the milk jugs. And we have him when they left the store, they ran out of room. So they piled more groceries into the back. And basically, the way I understood it, the way he explained it, whether it's factual or not at this point, obviously I don't have any evidence to point either way. But he did sound credible that the milk was put on him and then ultimately on the next to him. When he got out of the car, he moved the milk to the center console because Summer was off to the passenger side door, leaning against that door. And he wasn't able to explain in his mind how that picture came to be, but his mom was adamant that they left with Summer leaning against that door with those milk jugs, which is that's interesting. I mean, I took it down. I've got it here that says this was going to be a problem, and I gave him a heads up that it potentially could be an issue of conversation.
Yes.
So go ahead, say what you're going to say.
No. So I know we're not really. You didn't ask me to opine on just Hunter. I think there are a lot of other issues around the whole Summer piece that need to be looked at.
Yeah. So in about the 2450 mark in the video, Hunter tells me that Summer could have been injured from being underwater. He adds being left in a hot car also while they went into the store. Now he offers this information. Now whether or not he saw other interviews,
right?
I don't know. I didn't ask him that, but I'm still here, and I'm still talking to people. And if anybody in the area wants to talk to me, just send me an email. If you know something, I'd love to speak with you. But that said, what's your takeaway when he says, I looked over, and this was really interesting as well. He admits that he's standing there drinking that alcohol. Okay. And he tells us, as you mentioned, that he's the one that said, hey, can I have that? She bought it for her, and he says, can I have it? And she gave it to him. Okay. So that said, okay, then he's drinking that while Summer is playing right out in front of him. But Mom is in the car trying to figure out her phone because she's got one of those ad-minute phones. And Candace is just kind of, in the environment watching TikTok videos. And then ultimately Mom comes back and the two of them along the beach area or that little cove area, and I'll show you that tomorrow. Okay, they go and they're kind of looking for flowers and just kind of chit-chatting it up. Well, Hunter his attention's on Summer.
Now, what I couldn't figure out longitudinally from the timeline, the TikTok video when Hunter comes out sort of from the bush and apparently had been drinking the twisted tea and goes into the water, did that allegedly precede Summer's sputtering and going under the water, or was that after? Did you get a flavor for that?
No, I don't think we have a sequence on that.
I think that's important. I think the sequence is very important, because if indeed she sputtered and went under 20 minutes, I'm making this up, 10 minutes prior, and then he goes back in the water to he was splashing her and playing with her, she didn't look in distress per se in that video clip. So that's something I think that maybe needs to be, meted out a bit.
Well, what other interesting thing is, if Summer does go under, why isn't Mom reacting? Well, I mean, everybody's putting a lot of weight on Hunter here.
I know, it's a lot of pressure on a minor child,
and yet you have the parent and the grandmother with the granddaughter potentially going underwater.
Mm-hmm.
So I always like to make sure we don't lose, that fact as well. And I'm going to put some of these super stickers up, and thank you everybody, Miguel, coming in here. Forgive me. I'm just getting through to this here. So that in of itself is a red flag, right? We've got red flags in some of our emojis, but that in of itself is a huge red flag. Mm-hmm. You've got Mom there, you've got Grandma there. The number one job of a parent is to watch both Hunter and Summer, right? You've got two juveniles. Go ahead.
I mean, legally, she is in what we call in loco parentis, meaning that she is the parent instead of Allison at that point. So you're right, legally, she's responsible for Hunter as well.
Yeah.
And she plies him with alcohol and vaping.
Well, and you're right. And to his, and he says, yeah, I asked for it and she gave it to me. It's kind of like the kid in high school that hung out at the liquor store. Hey man, will you buy me something? Okay. As they're going in. Right. And yeah, I mean, obviously this is a different scenario, but it's the same thought process for an adolescent. And thank you. So there she is. When he finally says, he said, look, he said, I can't really tell you if she was under the water before the 5, 15, 20 second mark. Mm-hmm. From a medical professional, what I've heard different things about different types of drowning.
Right.
So what can you tell us? How educate us?
Okay. Well, really, there are like three kinds of drowning. There's the traditional drowning where somebody goes under, and it can be, by the way, somebody just gets dunked by a friend. It doesn't have to be for a prolonged period, but they can just be dunked. But in that time frame, whether it's a minute, even if it's 10 seconds, they aspirate like fluid, water, whatever, into their lungs, and it actually enters the lungs. Okay. So if somebody has a true drowning episode, we identify it as drowning, the traditional drowning term, because the water enters the lungs, and of course, then you get a sequence of events that happens, and you ultimately can die. The other two terms that people have been batting around are the dry drowning and the secondary drowning, as I recall. And, those two types of drowning, they differ a wee bit. One is but in both cases, you really don't get, the key is that in dry drowning or secondary drowning, you don't get water or liquid actually directly into the lungs. So what kills you is something that happens from the lungs up. So, for instance, in dry drowning, I get these two a little bit confused. Can you give me I know that they both exist.
Take your time.
They're kind of interchangeable.
Take your time.
In the dry drowning, what happens is that the trachea, which is when you're breathing in, you have your windpipe right here, let's say, and then it branches down into your lungs, your bronchi, and then it goes down deeper into the bronchioles. The water never goes past the trachea. But what happens is that the trachea goes into an acute spasm. And so when the trachea spasms, and I'm going to tell you a story, and it was awful. I did have this happen to a patient about a year ago in my office, and it was one of the worst experiences I've ever had. What happens is you get the spasm of the trachea, and the person can't get any air in. And so the muscles of the trachea are literally going, and the person is trying to gasp, but they can't get the air in. And so you can die from that. In the other type of secondary drowning, and it again is very rare, that is when you get water in the upper airway that slowly, within a few minutes of the event, will make its way down, but it isn't the water proper that causes you not to be able to get air in and out of your lungs and into the bloodstream. It is the fact that the lung lining becomes suddenly gets extremely inflamed, and then the bronchioles down below can't exchange air. So then you die. Both of dry drowning, so think of dry drowning as the trachea one, or the secondary drowning, are extremely rare. And if you have that event, it happens almost immediately, like within minutes. So you're not going to just go play TikTok and go hither, thither, and yon. It's not something that a lot of people say, well, 24 hours later. Occasionally with the secondary drowning, occasionally in the rare event, you could have it after 24 hours, an event. But usually what happens is immediately you're getting your symptoms, and it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. I don't see either of those from what the young man described of Summer.
Well, would that symptomology change based on age and the structure of the development of the lungs?
Well, that's a really good question. Two things. Generally, in pediatric, just in general, if you look at the pediatric population, and let's say we usually say 18 and under versus adult population, the number one cause, if you find somebody just flat out on the ground, you walk by, if it's a child, the number one cause is respiratory cause. Okay. It's not cardiac, hypertension, a stroke. If you were a betting person and you walk by and it's a baby, especially if it's a baby or a child, 4, 5, 6 years old, and they're flat out on the ground, the number one thing you have to think about is respiratory. Now that could be respiratory from a pneumonia, from respiratory syncytial virus, which can be deadly. It could be from a choking and you have, hypoxia. But respiratory is the number one thing in children, and the lungs are far more delicate, and children take a deep dive quickly, no pun intended, but they dive quickly in terms of they get sick very quickly. But if you recognize what's going on with them, you can turn a child around very quickly. Whereas with adults, we don't generally think respiratory. If they've stopped breathing, it's usually a consequence of their hypertension, their heart attack. I mean, I've seen people in their early 20s come into the emergency room and they've had undiagnosed hypertension and they've had a huge blowout bleed in the brain. They're dead. And I've had, unfortunately, quite a number of cocaine overdoses of young people. And what happens is their heart gets so fast, and then they have an acute heart attack and they die.
They have a cardiac arrest.
Cardiac arrest. So I'm just kind of trying to give you the idea.
Sure. I appreciate it.
In babies, when they're first born, we do have to be extremely careful, obviously. But when we go to suction a baby, it has to be done extremely delicately, because the trachea that I was talking about before you get what we call laryngospasm, and it happens very much more quickly in a child, a newborn, an adolescent than it would in a young adult or middle-aged or elderly person. So that's a really good question. What is the difference?
So would heat, there's been a lot of talk about the car, and would the heat change that symptomology, onset, or decrease it, upset?
No, I think it would
kick it up or back.
It would kick it up. But what is inconsistent with this all being like this hypothetical dry drowning scenario is that this young man, if we are to believe this young man, and I'm watching the chat and people are saying he could be lying. I mean, he lied about the phone. I mean, of course, every kid lies. But if we are to believe him, this summer was up and about normally throughout their journey around town.
Yeah, and that was a piece of the puzzle that Candace has left out, her mom, that they went to, she said they went to the grocery store, which is verified. But, they also went to other places. And so, that in and of itself, if we weigh, and that's going to be conversation number 2 here coming up here in a minute. So let me grab a couple of questions real fast, Dr. Were they looking at flowers saying how pretty, or was Candace showing him a TikTok video? Because he said both. That is a great question, Doodle, because I don't know the answer to that. I know that he said that mom, and i.e. the grandmother, and Candace were both looking at TikTok videos, and he was looking at some of them, but his attention was into drinking the tea, the alcohol, and out in front where Summer was. Now, go ahead. That's okay.
No, I'm just wondering, and La Di Doodles, I like that name. There was so much detail in this interview. It was so rich in terms of information. I'd have to go back and look, but I thought that he said there was the TikTok thing going on. And then at some point, when he was in the water, after he sort of saved her, so to speak, they went to look for flowers because they love flowers. And I do recall in her TikTok video that she took a couple pictures of some pink, they almost look like impatiens or something, wildflowers though. So I think it's a great question. I think it was quite fuzzy, his narrative around this. He's drinking, he goes into the water, and again, at what point did she sputter and go under? At what point did they go harvesting or whatever, collecting? I think if you were, you did a fabulous job, Chris, but if I had my wish, I think that to go back and get a little more information.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. But here's another consideration. Okay. Why make up a story of drowning? Why? You see, this is one of these innocuous details where a 15-year-old says, yeah, there was a 5-year-old underwater and I went after her to pull her up. Okay. Now either that's a Superman complex for a 15-year-old.
Right.
And he's projecting that. Or it happened.
Well, it may have happened, but he didn't really have it in his mind that he was the hero and went in to rescue her.
I totally agree.
2020, looking back, when he found out she's missing, maybe he thought, oh my God, could it have been that when she sputtered, something happened, and he's built it up in his mind? I don't know.
Yeah, that could be. But here's the most interesting part of that. Mom was interviewed on Sunday and said it didn't even happen. So this is one of these, yeah, I'll admit that I asked for the alcohol. And I'll tell TBI, the FBI, and the sheriffs and other authorities that story. But it didn't happen. Right? Meaning the other side of that coin, right? It just did not occur. So we call that DLR, does not look right.
Right.
All right. So that goes up here. I have that in the DLR column, by the way. And so to ask him the minutia details about mom, Candace, and the grandmother who were doing the flower searching, according to him, okay, I'm hoping I can talk to Candace while here and kind of dive into it and talk. And, there's got to be some truth to something into that.
Well, I'm sure that there are threads of truth in everything that was said, and there probably are some threads of
deception.
I'm looking at. Do you mind if I say something? If I say something from the chat that I'm seeing?
No, go ahead.
I look what oops.
Is that one?
No, that wasn't that one. But I want to make sure that somebody in the back maybe marks Undertale Lover 123 _ YT, because I really like what that person said.
Okay, let me go find it. And that was the other question. How deep was the water hole? You'll actually see the water hole tomorrow. Okay. I was there today, and it all depends where you're standing. It goes from about 5 inches and gets deeper, and then about 15 feet out, there's a drop off, and I can't really tell how deep it is, but it looks significant. There's boats out there and everything, but it could only be 2 or 3 feet, but it only takes 6 inches of water for a 5-year-old to drown.
Yep.
Okay, so what was the again?
So I can read it if you don't mind.
Yeah,
so
go ahead, please.
Undertale Lover 123 said. Hunter said he went in after Summer went under. Then Mom went looking at flowers. But Hunter was throwing his peace signs or whatever he was doing and was smiling and walked in to the water in the TikTok video. So that, and I agree with Undertale. I love her. Is his walking in, smiling and splashing her, is that the moment he claims that she was sputtering? Or is it at a different time? And I really agree with Undertale Lover, because I think that needs to be elucidated. Because honestly, if he says, oh, that was of course he's probably listening right now, but if he says, oh, that was the time, then I'm thinking, okay, then she really didn't sputter that we could see. He was casually going in.
Yeah, I think that is pre-incident. I think towards the end of the swimming event is really when she went down. If she went down. Okay. I mean, because if you listen to how he presented it, he said she came up and said, I was just swimming underwater. Okay. When he pulled her up, according to his statement, when he pulled her up, she responds when he says, are you okay? And she goes, yeah, I was just swimming underwater. Okay. So that's begged the question where I asked him, I said, well, how long was she under that water? And he said, I don't know, 5, 15, 20 seconds. And then I followed up later on where I said, do you really know? And he said, no, I don't. I really don't know.
But again, as I said earlier, it doesn't matter if it's 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 3 seconds, or 3 minutes, because if somebody just dunks you as a joke, if you inhale, you can drown. So in a way, the time frame doesn't matter so much.
This is a great question here. Why did TBI take Hunter's phone? Because Candace had hers Friday still. Well, Candace went and got a new phone. I know that for a fact at AT&T. So TBI took her phone, and they took everybody's phone, all their electronics. And right away, they went down and got new phones. So those new lines are up, and there's still communication taking place on them. So that's a great question, but I hope I just answered it. So Hunter goes, when she pulls up, and she says to him, what did you tell them? That's in the red flag column over here for me.
I mean, honestly, Chris, there were so many red flags in this interview. it's very concerning, and it leaves me with a deep, deep concern regarding Summer's family.
Yeah, there doesn't Hunter's phone is still with TBI. They have it. They put it in evidence. Showed it, and they also put everybody else's phones in evidence. And so Hunter is using his grandfather's phone, who you'll see in the very first part of the video. He picks it up, and Mom tells me, that's his grandfather's phone who passed away. And that's the phone he's using today. Now, one interesting observation that's coming up in the chat, which I think is interesting, is why don't we see blue around her lips if she had a blue slushie at Sonic? I don't know.
I don't know either. I mean, this is this is really like a puzzle.
Yeah, there's another one here from Dane. Why did they buy her a tracksuit and change her to take her to the big water park that they also never went to?
Yes,
that's
it's a beautiful question. I wondered that myself. Sorry.
Yeah, in the beginning, right? The plan was, to go to the water park. Okay. And then, according to Hunter, it was changed. And because of the prescription, there was a long line. They had to wait.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to basically stay in the area.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when they changed the plan to go swimming. But then there's also an ad that Candace came over to go fishing. That was the first part. So we've got 3 stories there.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally agree. They're not lining up, Dane. And thank you. And by the way, if I've missed your question and you put it up here, forgive me. Put it back up. If you put a super chat up, I will make sure that I pull it up here.
I saw. No, I know. I mean, this is just this week. One could go on for hours, and I don't feel like I'm answering maybe the questions that you had for me. I did want to just mention Terry, and Terry, I did not get your last name on your handle, so to speak, but Terry mentioned basically that CPS should have been involved with his family long, long ago. And
CPS has been,
and they have been, but maybe to take the children out, and
many times.
Yeah. And I think that's a whole nother conversation for another day. But it is terribly sad that it looks as if CPS, maybe in my opinion, and this unfortunately has happened to me many times in my life, where I felt very strongly that CPS needed to open a case or remove a child. And they say, we have so many cases and this just doesn't meet the threshold right now, so we're understaffed, so sorry. And it and unfortunately I've had some fatal consequences with children who were not apparently at the threshold for CPS, according to CPS, and they ended up dying in the home.
Yeah, I mean, we see this all the time. We've got, and you're right, it's our rules sometimes. And we're seeing it in San Diego with Maya Meliete's case. You got 3 children there, right, and they have to go to court to get, information to see those 3 kids for the biological grandparents and the cousins and everybody. But the father has custody.
Right.
And he's saying no.
Right.
So it's one of those things. I just, all of these, guys and gals who do that job and like you're talking about, I mean, it's a thankless job sometimes because their caseloads are just unreal. It's just unreal. Thank you, Jonathan. And thank you. What else you got, Doc? What are you thinking?
Oh, I mean, there's so much. I'm looking at all these comments that people have, it's incredible how many people are engaged and gripped by this story and are able to see different areas of deception, etc. I know. I mean, I guess I had wanted to speak a little bit about, my concerns about Summer in general, in terms of her health and development. And, this is really based on my having sort of poured over hours and hours of not photograph. I think it's really hard. It's hard. You can do it. But in one photo, I don't think you can make a declaration about somebody. But in multiple photos and in multiple videos in different contexts, like we can see with Summer, I think there's some significant, troubling, frankly, sad developmental. I think what we used to call autism, but I believe she is rather profoundly developmentally delayed, based on some neurologic findings in many of her videos. And so I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about that. And
go ahead. What are your observations, sir?
Yeah. Well, number one, and even in the swimming video, she's twirling. So I guess there's some sort of, these are the things, there are many, there are probably 100 findings one could observe in a child who has either cerebral palsy and or developmental delay, and or pervasive developmental delay, which is autism. And there are some neurologic findings, and then there are some sensory findings, behaviors that they do that make them feel better. And I notice, number one, about the fact that she twirls a lot, whether the swing, around and around and around. I'm sure we all can remember loving to go on a swing or merry-go-round, and it's fun. But this is excessive. And in watching one of her video clips of her on the swing, some of the movements that she makes with her arms and her hands are not normal movements. In the church videos, and I want to say that I think the church has gotten a terrible rap, in my opinion. I think from what I can glean, it's a lovely church community, albeit maybe not sophisticated. Maybe they didn't notice that Summer, it wasn't just an attention getting, I need love kind of thing. If you look and sort of take slowly many of these clips, she has an abnormal gait. She toe walks, which is very classic of a child with autism. She does have some spasticity in her movements of her arms. She has sort of claw-like hand movements that are just sort of there for her. If you watch the way she's taking Miss Robin's hair, and yes, she is kind of putting it over her own bald head, but she's also feeling it, touching it. There are times where she's taking Miss Robin's skirt and she's rubbing it against her face. She even almost nuzzles into her and touches her breast and chest area. All of this is sort of a sensory phenomenon that occurs in children that have significant neurologic problems. And I think the other is what I call sort of staring into the middle distance. If you look at at the church, some of the times where they're singing, and there's one particular one that really struck me. It's a young, he appeared to be a young Latino boy who probably was around the age of Summer, and he's up with the adults and Summer singing, and he's singing every single word, and he's just following everything. And Summer is going here, going there, putting her head back like this, looking into the middle distance, almost looking up at the ceiling, as if she doesn't really understand or cannot integrate what's happening around her. So there's so much more, I guess, to say. One other time is when they're in church and they have a children's collection for donation for the children's program, and each child is given a small little can or something to collect money around the church. And every child, no matter the age, is able to understand the sequence of what they need to do. And they get the pot, and then they go and they collect the money. And as every child's going, let's say left, Summer's going right, and she's just wandering around and she doesn't know what to do. And I think in a lot of the chats that I've read, and initially myself included, I think people are sometimes hypercritical or very critical of the lack of nurturing and parenting, etc., on the part of Don and Candace. And I think that probably is very true. And we do know that in terms of child development, it's nature and nurture, right? So, I mean, how much of what she, is doing and some of her behaviors are really at the pre-verbal level, really at the 2-year-old level. Is that from nurture or lack of nurture, or is that a genetic thing? And
we're not hearing a lot of her voice. We're not hearing.
She seems to be almost nonverbal. And that's why so I know I'm going on and on. I'm sorry. I could take 5 hours.
No, you're fine. Outside of and you're fine. You're a doctor. Are you kidding me? I mean, I'm just old homicide guy.
Who cares? I'm sure, I know that's all right. But people may say, well, who really cares about all these findings? And to me, I think
it's relevant.
It's relevant for 2 reasons. Number one, nobody wants a child with a significant disability. And I think it is human nature, myself included, to be able to say, I'm not my child. It must be because of the parent did this or that, never would touch my family. And it's very easy to point critical fingers at the outside world, because I think we all fear that something could happen or has happened with our children that has resulted in their, difficulties with their development or their mental health or whatever. And so I think it is really important for us to, realize that every one of us, human beings, can have a child.
So take a look at that question right there.
Yes, reactive attachment disorder. Yes.
Excellent. Give us a high level run by on what that means.
Okay. But I wanted to say number 2, and then I want to go back to the reactive. Number 2 is
my deep voice.
Sorry, I am so sorry. But number 2, what I wanted to say is I think it's very relevant of these sort of these collection or constellation of signs that I've pointed out, including her lack of being verbal, because it puts Summer in a vulnerable population. And, a lot of times, like my schizophrenic patients that live in group homes, frail elderlies, we have autism, a nonverbal cerebral palsy. My patients like that, I always tell the caregivers, these are very vulnerable children and adults that can be taken great advantage of. And I guess I'm shocked, honestly, and I don't mean to disparage, berate, whatever, law enforcement or whatever. But to me, and I see everything that I saw in these photos and videos, I'm stunned and troubled that nothing was commented about the fact that this may be a child who easily clings on to strangers, has no ability for boundaries, is not verbal. And I'm wondering from you, Chris, what are your thoughts on that? Why wouldn't that have been, promulgated or not advertised? Promulgated is the only word I know.
Well, I'm going to answer that, and I'm going to answer C-Star real fast. If the truth of rumor, Don tried to sell his 2 kids. Don's sister said this. If Don's sister said it, I would like to sit down with her and find out a little bit more. So I don't have the answer to that.
But I have a thought for you, Tiffany Marie, who is she grabbed a great interview, and maybe you and she can get together and look at that family more. Sorry.
Okay. Well, I've not left the yard.
You've not left where?
The yard, the house.
Okay. Yeah.
It's I'm batting 1,000 right now so far on my YouTube thing here in terms of folks that I think will be in the clinker. Okay, at some point. Old terminology for the big house. That said, is this a stranger abduction? Is what basically is your question? Is this something that I think is in the realm of stranger possibility? First of all, I'm going to do a presentation over the next period here and really break it down. My expertise is criminal behavior analysis and those guys who choose children for sexual deviant behavior during the commission of homicide. That's what I've been trained in, and I've been studying these guys for close to 40 years now. So the question to me is, what is the challenge the suspect has in relationship to coming up into that property, the geographic profiling of the property, all the other things that are taking place? Now, do I believe that kids are being, snatched and grabbed? Yes, that's happening, but that's for sex trafficking. Okay. A 5-year-old in this type of profile and victimology, a suspect would have to be pretty advanced in relationship to the risk that they would take for that piece of property. And so at this point, I am actually leaning away from a stranger abduction and leaning into, let's sort out all the other moving parts here. And that's why I started with Hunter.
Okay. I guess you maybe misunderstood my question.
Okay, go ahead. Yep.
So my question was, why do you think, sorry, I mean,
that's all right.
My question was, why do you think that law enforcement, when they gave the sort of the vital stats of this child, didn't mention she's not verbal, she's potentially vulnerable because she has no boundary? None of that has come to light. And I'm just wondering, from your perspective as a law enforcement person, don't you think that we should have known that as the public?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, yes and no, right? I mean, there's always a need to know. But in this, they could also be using that as leverage for the interview. Because if, let's say, a family member is involved, hypothetically, okay, those are the kind of things you want to get in the interview, to have the parents tell you they know right from wrong, left from right. And then you want to qualify it with, do they understand that society understands it's wrong? Okay. Well, the worst case scenario is always, when you get somebody in that seat and they say, and you ask them, and then they say, well, where did you hear that? And they go, well, I read it online, or I saw it in the paper. Okay. Now they have they have an out. Okay. So a lot of information is held back purposely. That's why I bleeped those 4 or 5 names, because I thought what I was hearing could potentially be critical to an ongoing fluid investigation. And I'm just here on YouTube, right?
Right.
So, but my experience kicked in and said, oh, that could be problematic. And so therefore I need to protect the integrity of Summer and those investigators who are working on this at both ends of the candle. So to your point, yes, it could be advantageous to put that out there, but I think they already know. And, I guarantee you, they've bounced this up to the BAU and forensic psychologists and a variety of other professionals such as yourself, who have come to the same conclusion. And, maybe we can get you on that team one day, Dr. Salerno, because, just kind of throwing it up there, right? But folks like us go to folks like you behind the scenes and say, Doc, here's what we have. What are you seeing? And you give us exactly what you just said. Okay? Now, floating that into the environment where you're potentially looking at some people within a core circle, okay? Well, that gives them the advantage. And, kudos to the investigators right now who have kept it very close to the chest. Okay? And what I think is going to be really interesting is I hope somebody is asking them. Okay. I'm really struck by this idea that the boys were either A, at home, or B, at work with dad. Okay. Either way, then dad has to be home with the boys while mom is out with Candace, or while Candace is out with Summer, okay, and grandma. Whether they were going to a water park or a swimming hole at this point, okay, it is just, icing on the cake. Because if the boys were with Don at home, then he's not at work.
Mm-hmm.
If he's at work with the boys, then how does he know there's some guy on his property? And that doesn't make sense. Okay, that's DLR. Okay. And so, and if the oldest boy is 12 and he can babysit, then why were the boys with him in the initial story?
Right,
from whatever parent, right? Whatever one of those, whatever. So, and I'm not saying there's, there's there. Okay. I'm just saying those kind of questions are as confusing and need to be unraveled as is some of the things that this young man was saying. And, to his credit, okay, to Hunter's credit, he's been under a tremendous amount of pressure. And I asked him the big question, right? At the end, what do you think should happen to the person that did this? Well, people that are guilty tend to lessen the punishment versus somebody who is, just kind of thinking through the process. And he responded pretty quickly. He said, well, I think they should, go away for a very, 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 very long time. So I know that's a long answer. Can you talk about the phone call from Don regarding the man creeping around, and what does that mean? Well, just to kind of paraphrase it again, and thank you for that question, Ginger. I'm not sure the call occurred. I don't know, because it just came out of the blue, where they're in line at getting a prescription, and a phone call comes in about some creepy guy hanging around the property wanting to touch the kids. What? Okay. So I don't know what to do with that at this point. He said it happened. I don't know if he's telling me the truth, or, it's, something else going down here. I don't know yet, to be honest with you. But I'm sure we'll figure it out. Okay. Go ahead.
No, I wanted to, I see Daisy White has a comment, and Lamp Pole, and Christy, I didn't get her last name. And I want to say that I see that people are sort of parsing words that I've used, or saying the person's not verbal or not, or they're developmentally delayed, or they're the words that I've used. It seems as though the chat is parsing, and including Christy saying, well, she didn't have a developmental delay. She wanted love. It could be both. And I'm not at all giving a definitive diagnosis, because I have not examined her in vivo extensively. I'm just using my 30 years of working and being a physician and working with children who have problems in the neurologic realm, and saying, this is what I observe, and these are real findings. I also said that it's nature and nurture. So It isn't just she was born with a neurologic problem, or she wasn't, or she got love or she didn't. It's not black or white. In these conversations, I believe we need to be respectful with one another, and we also need to realize that so much of this is in the gray zone, including the story and who are the actors involved. Could it be one parent, two parents, the drug dealer? One thing I was thinking about, and I can speak from experience, sadly, for this, is I do have patients who have been, as children, over a period of more than years, sold to the parent who needs to pay off a drug debt, and their child is given to the drug dealer for sex, or not by the drug dealer, but to be basically pimped out. So while Summer may not have been abducted because they're way far up in the hill, I do believe we have to consider the possibility, if there is a drug issue, if there's a drug dealer, if there is debt, this child is also at risk for being pimped out from my experience.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's certainly a possibility, but it's a rarity at 5 years old. And that's why the numbers, statistically, the numbers don't speak to it. But it does happen. There's no question about it. But then you have this variance. Okay. If you have a buyer, then the buyer has to be in a marketplace, i.e. at least have contact with the purchaser. So that means all of the forensics evidence is going to flush that out. And i.e., the phones, the computers, and all the other stuff. Okay. Which, we'll know pretty soon. I'm sure of it. It usually takes, 60 days for a turnaround. Depends if it went to the cast team or not in the Bureau. And they'll pull it up. So thank you, Roxanne.
Tell me again, 60 days. Can you say that again, Chris?
Typically, a turnaround is about 60 days. For any type of, evidence, cellular team. Okay? They're called CAST. And they're FBI. And it goes back to Quantico. They'll pull all the data up, and they'll trust me, they're going to flush everything on this mountaintop. And that's the way that goes. But I'm not going to go. Go ahead. I don't want to tip too many hats here, so I'm not going to say it.
Okay.
But go ahead.
No. There was a question probably 20 minutes ago that somebody asked about the possibility of an attachment disorder with, and people wanted to have an explanation, I think, of that. I mean, attachment disorder, they're actually, the overall umbrella diagnosis is when a child experiences early trauma, even in utero, we now know, when they experience rejection or lack of love and care and kindness, and they then develop and have an inability, varying degrees of inability, to actually make an attachment, an appropriate attachment, initially with the caregiver, guardian, or parent, and then that can lead to lifelong difficulty in having intimate relationships, close friendships, etc. There are two types of reactive attachment disorders. One is the disinhibited type, and one is the inhibited type. And a lot of people think about reactive attachment disorder as the child that has difficulty, maybe from an orphanage, that experienced no love, no touch, no this. They get adopted into a family, and then that's the child that might be killing the chicken next door, burning down the house, doing very sort of antisocial behaviors. That's a disinhibited reactive attachment disorder. Most often when children have a reactive attachment disorder, it's the inhibited type. And that is that they are just very shy, maybe a loner. They avoid conflict. They avoid close relationships. They may only have one friend. So I think the question was around, could Summer have a reactive attachment disorder because of the failure of bonding with the mother? Absolutely. I mean, this is a child who would really need to have a formal neuropsychiatric evaluation, which takes place over a period of days, not over a period of video clips, which I've analyzed here. So, yeah.
You're great, Doc. And I think we have great people on this channel, and they're really smart like you, and we appreciate you coming up here and just chiming in and just throwing some stuff up here. And Kathy, thank you so much. I'm sorry I missed that, but I just wanted to acknowledge it real fast. There's a lot of I'm going to answer this one. Somebody's asking about all the sex offenders in the area. Yeah, there are a significant amount. Some are high risk, pretty close. But you can bet within the first 15 hours, TBI was holding them up and shaking them by the boots, tracking to make sure they knew every step within the last 20 to 24 to 48 hours. What a lot of people forget, statistically, the first 3 hours a child goes missing, you've already statistically missed 2 hours of that 3. So you have 60 minutes to make decisions about how fast this information is going to travel through the law enforcement community. Statistically, if you get from that 3 hours to 12 hours, okay, 64% of children that are abducted by strangers, they are killed within that first 3 hours. Okay, that leaves a very narrow time frame here, or a very narrow window, if Summer was abducted by a stranger. So that's that problem. The other situation now is we can't take off the plate yet that this was an accident that got out of control. Okay. And this is right now I'm trying to think through, I'm not saying that's what happened.
What are the possibilities?
What are the possibilities? Okay. And as a result of that, okay, the next piece of this, okay, is, okay, did somebody else in the family inadvertently hurt the child? Okay. I mean, could it have been, an accident by one of the other siblings? I don't know. I've seen it, okay, in different scenarios. And then the parents panic because they're covering now, because they maybe have lost one, and maybe they're covering so they don't lose any more. I don't know. I'm not saying that's the scenario here. Okay. I'm suggesting, though, right now there's enough information, and this investigation has been so fluid, okay, that the abduction scenario, in my opinion, is less and less likely versus some other scenario around that property. Could it have been
I was just throwing that out as like the fifth possibility down the line or something.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. Absolutely. I love it. And
no,
thoughts, go ahead.
No, I feel bad. I don't know the name of the person that said that they feel that we've delved into the realm of mental health and we've not really done enough with your interview with Hunter. And I am sorry if I took us down a road in terms of mental health, neurologic and psychiatric, but I do believe that those areas, both for Summer and the dysfunction that I see in the family, are hugely important to this case.
Totally agree.
Well, I don't know where you're
professional.
Well,
I don't have MD at the end of my name.
What'd you say?
I don't have MD.
Folks,
I have PhD, piled higher and deeper.
Okay, listen.
I don't even have PhD.
That's all right. But listen, man, people want to hear more about about the interview and your thoughts on that. I'm not sure what they're,
I think at this point, there's for me, there was a couple of dynamics going on with him. I really believe that he's taking, well, first of all, I think there's power and control and dominance taking place.
Yep.
And I think we all know where that shift is. Okay. Is there dysfunctionality taking place? Yeah, of course. But does it get to a point and a place where, the kid goes off the rails, hypothetically, and this whole thing, just spins out of control? I don't know if he's capable of that right now. Personally, after speaking with him, sitting across from him, and sensing him. Now, do I think, that, I've sat across from some of the best liars ever. And I've been lied to so many times that, it's my radar immediately is up. And so what I do is I don't let you know that I know you're lying. I just let you do it. Okay.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes, you're very good at that.
Well, because at the same time, ultimately, I'll circle back and we'll talk about it again. Okay. It drove my kids crazy. My daughter specifically, because, her boyfriends never came by my house because they were like, Mr. McDonough's, my oldest son, who, by the way, is a professor of economics.
Wow.
He goes, he said, Dad, you're a walking lie detector. I said, well, I don't know about that. Okay. And we start laughing. And I said, see, you just lied. And he starts laughing. And so for him to embellish, yeah, I think he embellished some things. But he's 80-20 in my book right now. And because I think he's already been grilled 3 separate times before me. And I didn't grill him. I just sat there and listened to the young man because I really think some of the things he's telling us really did occur. And as a result of that, if we can find just a little nugget that helps us identify where Summer is, then boy, we've all done, our part in the true crime community, to kind of, help this along for him too. The poor kid, he does have a disability. I could see that right away when I started talking to him. And, to see the popper, I couldn't get him to stop the popper. Okay. Because his mind was just going, and that's what you just qualified. So there's one more question here. Thank you, Dr. Binspat. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Amber.
Thank you. Yes, cool. I do think that is nice. Chris, I wanted to acknowledge something that Zelda wrote. It was probably 10 minutes ago now. And when I had been writing, or she wrote about the fact that apparently she adopted, I believe she said in the chat, 2 children from an orphanage that had, it sounds like, a disinhibited reactive attachment disorder and were arsonists. And that it just, I don't want to misquote you, Zelda, but she said it destroyed them, their family, and I just want to say that I am so sorry that you went through that. And I actually have one of my very best friends from medical school adopted 2 children from the Eastern Europe, and she has a similar thing. And it has been, it can destroy a marriage. It can destroy relationships amongst other children. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that there's so much that happens in this world. And I think that mental illness and neurologic disabilities do get stigmatized. And I think it was very courageous of Zelda to share that with our chat. And I'm sorry that happened. And I pray for your own healing.
Okay. Thank you for pointing that out, Doc. I missed that. So I appreciate you grabbing that. What else have we got in here? So we've got, by the way, tomorrow, let me talk about tomorrow too. So I went to all the different locations. I did confirm some things that he put out. In fact, I even asked if they still had video. The manager wasn't in, but the clerk, one of the gals, and this was at the hippie house. The gal who was there, her cohort, actually was there that day and confirmed everything that Hunter said.
So that's good.
So yeah, and then the other stuff I'll show you tomorrow, and I'm hoping to, keep this thing on track for the truth and not speculation. I don't have time for that like the next person. But we just want to make sure that if we can help find or add a little piece of something that we can feed the authorities and let them do their job, then that's one of the reasons we're poking around down here. Go ahead.
Roxy 1010 says the 13 deleted messages, and that one that said it is done.
Yeah. I
what are your thoughts on that, Chris?
Well, there's more to it.
Oh.
And it's deleted. That's where some of the bleeping.
Oh, okay.
So I don't want to go there right now.
Fair enough.
Let them figure that, that piece of the puzzle out. But this was one of the things, it's not a, stranger problem. I can tell you that. But yeah, his radar went up and he went into the car to her new phone and looked at it. Okay? And he knew, where to look, according to what he's saying. Whether it's true or not, I don't know right now. Personally, I don't have, that insight. Could it have happened? Yeah, absolutely. So go ahead.
No, I'm looking at Ella Verbena, and then there was Clarity Down. Clarity Down, I agree. She says, "Dear Lord above, this is depressing. We all just want to find Summer alive."
Yeah.
It is depressing. And then El Verbena, "Prayers for Summer Moon. I pray and hope she wasn't abused or murdered."
Yeah. Yeah. No, there's enough things out there already that, I think we can all say that, there's a piece of neglect here. And that's the other thing about Hunter. I think he really felt like he was acting as if he was, a big brother idea. Now, do I know what the relationship is between, him and, all the other speculation or rumors or whatever? I asked him directly, and you heard it. Does she like, is she into you, basically? And he answered it. And now, could he have been lying? Yeah, of course. Okay. And I think it's pretty interesting that both of them, and this is a great point right here. A little weird, both Candace and Hunter do interviews today. Yeah, good point, Sarah.
Rebecca A., thank you for correcting me. She says, "It's trafficking, doctor, not pimping out." I guess it's where you live, and but thank you for correcting me on that.
Yeah, it's definitely a branding issue. And
right.
But yes, but thank you. That's
thank you for, if what I said when I said pimped out is, and I was, if you go back, I was struggling to find the right word, and it didn't sound, I agree with you, Rebecca. It was like, I don't think that's what I really want to say, but I couldn't find the word. So I really appreciate that you corrected me on that. I'll put that in my brain, use that word next time.
This is awesome. Let's see here. I'm going through some of these as well.
A lot of people are asking Marsha. Oops.
We're refusing to see through the below.
You guys are refusing to see through the BS. What BS? Can you clarify?
Yeah, well, can you clarify that, Blind? Just help me understand where you're coming from, and I appreciate it. Or maybe this is it. He wants to play with kids.
Oh, I mean, yeah. I mean, I think again, yeah. We don't have enough information.
Well, I know that they've. I know that they've lifted him and spun him around a couple of times. So I hope there's a little more clarity to that. And by the way, everything he told me, if it is a lie, now they have more evidence.
I just wanted a lot of people, Chris, have said a lot, and I didn't catch names because I'm a rather slow reader, but have asked about the photographs a lot of times with Summer holding her genital area or, sort of in a self-protective mode. And what are our thoughts on that?
Where are the photos? I can you help me? Have you seen them, Doc?
Oh, yes, I have.
And what's he doing?
No, I'm sorry. It's the question was, what are our thoughts on the photos of Summer, sometimes standing by herself, sometimes with her family, and she's crossing her hands and she's putting them over her private area. And I think a lot of people in the chat, as well as other channels, have been concerned about, does that suggest, sexual abuse or not?
Well, and go ahead. What's your professional opinion?
I'll tell you. I mean, I think that anybody that, especially guys, when they feel threatened, whether it's sexually or not sexually, it is a way to protect yourself. And I don't necessarily think it has to deal with sexual abuse. Generally, when we deal with children and we're evaluating for that, there are other, you look at that behavior, but then there are other behaviors that they, during a physical exam, that they will reflect or show that will be much more revealing about whether they've been, violated or even touched inappropriately. It's hard to know from one picture or 4 pictures or 10. I think that's why I found the video clips, Chris, of her dancing in the rain and swinging and at church so compelling, because you see a moving picture, not just a picture.
Yeah. No, it's at that age, it can go either way. Right. I mean, meaning to your point, to everything you just said, that, could there be something in there? Well, we don't know. Do the family dynamics concern me? 100%. Actually 1,000% in terms of bingo card. Okay. Now, but I don't have enough information right now, and that's why I'm digging into this. But I do have a comment here. Meh. That's her MEA. She goes, meh. She goes, could her nonverbal be from mom doing drugs while she was in utero?
Oh,
interesting.
Okay, so nonverbal. Again, somebody corrected me on that. Daisy White corrected me earlier, and when I used the word nonverbal, and I agree, she is not nonverbal, because I have heard her say different things and a little bit of singing here and there. But let's just say she's profoundly speech delayed. Let's put it that way. So many things in utero happen, whether it's from toxicologic things like alcohol, cocaine, and heroin. My experience, I did 6 years of obstetrics, and I still do tons of pediatrics. And unfortunately, I have been exposed to hundreds, if not more, women that have used heroin and cocaine, prenatally or during their pregnancy. And, there's not one specific, like with alcohol, you can see fetal alcohol syndrome, and there are stigmata on the face, by the way, which Summer doesn't have. She only has one thing, but her mother has the same thing in that she has very wide set eyes. But all the other stigmata that we look for with fetal alcohol syndrome in the face, she does not have. But we used to think, oh, nothing can happen in utero. And I'm 60 years old. So when my mother, I don't think she smoked cigarettes. She used to smoke, but I don't know if she smoked during her pregnancies. But nobody knew these things. But now we know that smoking and vaping and all these drugs, whether they're prescription drugs or not, can be very harmful. I don't think there's one thing by doing marijuana or cocaine, etc., that you really see as a side effect physically that I've seen anyway. What I do see a lot of with the cocaine babies and the heroin babies is a lot of ADHD and a lot of developmental delays. I do see that. But the one thing I was going to quickly say is the biggest thing in the past 10 years that we've discovered is that in utero, babies feel whether they're loved, whether they're wanted, or whether they're rejected, if there are marital problems or relationship problems or domestic violence. The fetus experiences the entire array on a very primitive level of emotions. And we do know that there are studies that show that babies who were not wanted or rejected for whatever reason do have problems, after birth. It's fascinating that a baby could feel a sense of rejection before they were born, right?
Yeah, it's horrible. Mm-hmm. It's horrible. And I just had a super chat that went up. It basically said, and Hermerica, basically, and it just went off, so I'm going to just say it. She has been saying all along that Don was victimizing and that CPS was onto them. They just didn't have enough evidence. That was her comment. So thank you for that comment. And let's see here. I'm going down here. Hang on. Grab another super chat. And by the way, if you're new to this channel, please consider subscribing. You're welcome here no matter what, if you're a member or not. We just have one rule, and that's just be kind in the chat. Just take care of each other. The whole reason we have true crime is so we can talk about it and then have these types of times together without being mean to each other. I mean, we have enough of that going into the world. So that's the only rule that I have. And our mods, we have great mods, but we'd love to have you subscribe if you can. And you don't worry about that other stuff. If you can, great. But if you can't, that's okay. The fact that you're here is why we do this channel. So Navy vet. My granddaughter adopted 2 girls and a birth mother on drug alcohol during both pregnancy. The youngest has worse difficulties than the older. Oh, I'm sorry. Thoughts? Anything?
I think on that this is such an important and relevant conversation that you have allowed us all on chat to have tonight and invited me to speak about, that we need to shed light on the fact that there are disabilities out there, that there are effects from drugs and alcohol on the lives of babies and children. And I think by destigmatizing it, which is what we're doing by having a conversation, it really helps our nation, our communities, this channel, your members, your subscribers, to feel that they are not alone in struggling with a challenge. either with themselves or with a child or a spouse. So yes, I'm sorry. I've seen a lot of people saying that they've struggled. Here we've got Debbie Graby saying her daughter has global developmental delay, speech delay, however, no traceable cause in utero, perfect pregnancy, normal birth, Pied neuro as told, possibly genetic error. And Debbie, you can't blame that global developmental delay on an in utero situation. I think what we were talking more about is the effect that drugs and alcohol, or a sense of rejection that the child feels because of parental issues, can have. But something that's globally developmentally delayed like that, either you're looking at a genetic issue, or possibly at the time of birth, it could be a lack of oxygen, something. But I hope to God that you don't blame yourself, Debbie.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Our breed love. I said way earlier, Hunter's lying, and he better get his crap together and speak the truth. He was interviewed first before Candace got to him. He better remember he can be locked away. Yeah, that's a great point, because I reiterated that as well. You'll see in the video, I said to him, you don't want to get caught in that, because, if it turns out to go sideways, that's the last thing you want. And I used to give folks an out early on in investigations. And one of the analogies I used to use is, I used to call it the 7-Eleven ride. And this is what I used to say. I'd say, let's suppose you're driving down the street and you see your friend. And your friend says, hey, can I get a ride? And you say, sure, jump in, let's go. And then you drive to the 7-Eleven because he says, hey, let's go get a couple of Cokes. And you get to the 7-Eleven and he jumps out of the car and says, I'll be right back. He goes into the store, puts a ski mask on, robs the store, shoots the clerk, comes running out and jumps in your car and says, let's get out of here. Okay? And so then I would stop and say, have you committed a crime? 99% of people go, yeah. And then I'd say, what did you do? Well, he just killed that guy. I said, did you kill that guy? No. Okay. So now there's a couple of rules. And the law, where the lady justice wears a blindfold and she's got scales.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So here's the difference. Okay. Now Officer Friendless comes along, i.e. me, back in the day, and I say, hey, what do you know about this guy that you dropped off? Because we've got your car on video. And you lie about it. Well, now in California, that's called PC-32. It's called accessory after the fact. Because now you are doing what they call overt acts to facilitate the escape in a homicide. And actually, you can actually become an accessory to that homicide. But now, if I come to you and say, what can you tell me? And you turn to me and say, you're not going to believe this. I say, try me. I was driving down the street. My buddy, Frank, jumped in the car, takes me to 7-Eleven. He shoots the guy, jumps back in the car, and has the gun. I'm scared half to death. I don't know what to do. I'm glad you're here. This is everything that happened. Guess what? You are now a witness to a murder. And this is the kind of things that people forget. And I hope Hunter is listening tonight as well, because I reiterated to him that, look, this is a big problem. We're trying to find this little girl, and law enforcement's trying to find this little girl. Mm-hmm. All this other mishigosh, social media and all this other stuff, okay, can either help or not help. And I prefer, with our community here on our channel and others, there's a lot of great channels out there that are doing incredible work, okay, i.e. not investigation. They're just behind the scenes, moving things around. You will be surprised. I just recently taught a class where we talked about embracing this movement. Okay. I mean, crowdsource intelligence has been around for years. I mean, 50 years, right? It's not new, because it's citizens who solve crimes. Remember that. It's not cops. It's citizens who are witnesses who come forward and say, hey, here's a crime. Here's what I saw. And then you get the evidence that connects that suspect to that crime. But what we're doing here, this is great. And I really hope that people, continue to embrace this true crime community, but simultaneously that we do it respectfully, and that we remember that maybe this 15-year-old kid is getting pulled in multiple directions. Maybe there's a lot of things we don't know about behind the scenes, and this little piece that he shared and was willing to share, if it's baloney, well, as I used to say, you've just made a sandwich.
But I do think it took a lot of courage for this young man.
I agree.
Speak. And as you said earlier, Chris, I mean, there in every piece of, well, you didn't say it this way. I want to say it this way. In every piece of textile fabric, there are many threads. And some of the threads are more beautiful and lovely, and some are not so beautiful and lovely. But the whole thing ultimately will tell us a story. And I think right now, what you did with Hunter was you gathered some threads as part of the textile. And we don't know if it's what piece necessarily it's going to make for this entire design, but it's got to help somehow. And I think it's just fabulous that you trucked on down there and are doing this.
Well, it's a child. I mean, I still have a case that it's Leticia Hernandez, December 16th, 1989. She was 7 years old and she was taken right out of her front lawn. Now we found her. Actually, I discovered some things, and we found her she was a body dump, unfortunately, about a year and a half later. And we know who did it. We just don't have the evidence to bring this person to court. And so I understand. And by the way, this is also personal to me, because in 1978, this is how I got involved in law enforcement. My oldest son, a car pulled up and the door opened, and he was 2 at the time, 3. They slapped my mother when I was born.
He was a toddler.
He was a toddler. Thank you so much. And long story short, he didn't get in the car. He was on his little big wheel, and I ran after the car, and the suspect took off. And I made a vow that day, I will hunt these guys down for the rest of my life. And so it was personal. And so that's the whole reason my career path took the path that it did, dealing with children and the victimology. And so, I appreciate you saying that. And then, but I hope he is putting it out there. You've never left answer your question.
Yeah.
What do you think happened to the money? Oh, to Summer. He started saying her grandma lost it. What do you think he was trying to say?
Yeah, I wondered that too.
Well, yeah, what he said was, she has a temper, basically. That's what he was saying. And he actually said both do. And in his opinion, part of it comes on with drugs and alcohol. And the volume gets turned up. And there have been incidences where the children, all of the children have, and this was when they had relationships with family dynamics where, there would be a problem. Now the pillow, that is a great question. I asked him about the pillow. So that is a great question about that. I'm reading some of these as they're coming through. Okay. That I don't see her sitting on that pillow in the back seat of that car. I can't really tell, but I asked him about that pillow. Well, to me, my head always goes, is that a weapon? So even though it's a pillow, you'd be surprised how many people have smothered other people with pillows, especially mothers. Remember, as you're very familiar with Munchausen. Well, the number one weapon in that is a pillow. So go ahead, say what you're going to say.
No, I mean, just this is opening a whole nother can of worms. But the whole issue around the
and I'm not saying that.
No, right? I'm agreeing with you, but I think it even goes deeper because I believe that it's very odd that I have dealt with. I mean, I'm not saying I'm right. Believe me. I know I keep saying I've had 30 years, whatever, but I've never seen somebody have to shave their hair because they may have lice. And it honestly, when I first got to this, let's say a month ago, and I saw this child, which is Summer, with a shaved head, my initial thing was, oh no, she's got cancer and she's missing. And I just thought it was there's something very dramatic about that haircut.
Yeah, no, I concur. I mean, it's, and the clothing idea here, remember they show up and he was kind of, as we used to say, the curly shuffle for a second. And and when I asked, I said, well, where'd she change? And he says, oh, she changed in the house. And then I wanted to follow. I said, did she take the clothes? Okay. And Mom was sleeping.
Yeah.
Okay. According to Hunter. Okay. And she was laughing. And by the way, she's a really nice person. Okay. And, we all have our faults. But, and the other thing I forgot to say, we had food, we had pizza in between that. And what you see her yawning is she's actually burping.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah.
Okay. I'm across from her. And I'm like, well, there's a curveball. But that's because we were eating. And that's it. But yeah, why was she dressed so warmly? That's a great question. And that was one of the things, we've got another one here, Destiny. With Hunter drinking that day, how much correct information should be relayed on? Please address. Well, that's a great question. You have to corroborate it. And
I think you'd have to find out how much did she really buy? Was it really just one twisted tea? Because he's a pretty big guy. If he'd had breakfast and had one drink, and it sounds like that was not his first drink in life, probably he was not intoxicated. That's what I would say. I think if there's a problem with reliability, I think it's fear of throwing, his mother under the bus or thing, I saw on a few times, Chris, during when you were asking your questions, the mother making some specific facial with her lips, and she was looking at him as if to say, don't. So I think that is where maybe some deception or some lack of transparency might come through is, where does his allegiances, where do they lie? Wait, I have something really interesting, Chris. I'm sorry. May I say something?
Of course.
Okay. So Angela Kim says at 9:40 p.m., yes. And I did think this was interesting too, Angela. When that interview with the Candace and Don that you dissected, Chris, about a week ago, in that interview, Candace said, and this was Angela quotes her, losing Summer smothered her. Right. And I did think that was a very strange choice of words. And now you're talking about the pillow.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And so this is one of these random things, right?
Right. Or maybe not so innocent.
Well, it is for Hunter.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right? I mean, why is he presenting a pillow? I don't know.
What did he say about it again, Chris, about the pillow?
She was sitting on a pillow.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I mean, it's still too early, right? Need more data. Candace and Don mixed up their story with the haircut. Thank you, Janine. And I'm trying to get to everybody, so please forgive me if I've got a super chat here. I just answered that. Kimberly, H stated grandma was messed up. Clarification on what H meant by that statement.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I think there's some dynamics there that he was talking about witnessing her behavior, and that he felt, and you notice he did a comparative analysis to his grandma, and said, kind of said, not like mine, basically, but then he kind of threw her under the bus too, for a moment, right? Okay, well, Justice Janine, super sick. Thank you so much, Justice. We appreciate you so much. And then I've got that one. Okay, Leanne, so I think, I hope I didn't miss anything. Go ahead, Doc.
No, Leanne McKenzie at 942 says, I'm sure at Tiffany Marie, which is another true crime channel, small, wonderful channel. I'm sure at Tiffany Marie has a photograph that she blew up that shows what looks like to be the corner of a pillow behind one of the front seats. Now that's interesting.
Okay.
So
there you go.
We have to talk to.
I still think the milk problem is still a problem for me.
Well, tell us why.
Well, yeah. How do those milk? He says he gets out of the car and those milk things are in the middle, and the photograph clearly shows that she's leaning up against them.
Mm-hmm.
So, I asked him. I said, "Well, how does that happen? Somebody had to maneuver those." And he says, "Well, I got out of the car," and Mom Allie says, "Well, that's exactly how I saw her when she left here." So there's still some confusion there.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody just threw me under the bus. The other police group that comes on and do interviews just threw Chris under the bus, and I don't like that.
Oh,
Who's
Lord.
that?
Oh dear.
Who is it? I don't care. Throw me under the bus.
Kim.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm good with all of that. So what? Life is too short, and this is about summer. It's not about Chris McDonough. And that's how that rolls. So anyway, La de Doodles. H friend's mom states in my inbox now, she believes H lied each time he yawned. She says he's lying about the person at the Wells property.
So H's friend's mother states, and it's in your inbox, Lottie Doodles, right now, that she believes that every time he yawned, he lied. Interesting. But more interesting is that he's lying about the person at the Wells property. Which person? The guy that was living in the shed? What was his name? John? Or the guy that was allegedly there for a week or two trying to touch children? I thought both of those were a bit, not the shed one. I've seen that a lot in my life. People living in other people's sheds. But why would Don call about somebody staying for 1 to 2 weeks on that property?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question. Yeah, no, that just made no sense either. It's like, where did that come from, right? Where'd that come from?
What I know that we've been going for a long time, and there's just so many great questions, Chris. Yeah, and what I would like to do, if I have your permission, is sometime in the next few days, go back through the live chat questions and kind of cull some of the questions and corrections, and see if maybe if you would want to invite me back sometime, that we could answer some of these questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's pull them down and see where we can go. Let's see here. No, the suspicious man Don called Candace about. Yeah, so there was a suspicious guy allegedly that Don called Candace while she was through the drive-through at getting the prescription.
And Lottie Doodles thinks that he was lying about that. That's what I think she was saying. Wasn't Lottie Doodles a couple minutes ago saying she had something in her inbox that he lied about something?
Well, that didn't make any sense the moment I heard it. So, again, this goes in the 20 column.
Yeah.
Remember I said 80-20 right now. And we'll see where that's going to go. We'll see where it's going to go. So, anyway, it is 1 hour and 56 minutes, Doc. I want to thank you so much for
it's my honor. It's an honor and a privilege.
We're just grateful that you're amazing. And so here's the number to find her, to TBI. Call this number. Okay. If you have any information, please call that number. And if you really like what we're doing here, hit this, subscribe. And if you want to see more of Dr. Amy Salerno, just hang on. Put your seatbelt on. Okay. And thank you. Now, I've not seen the interview yet, but I just want to let you guys, I'm throwing in dialogue. Thank you so much. Beautiful May. You're very kind. Very, very kind. Grateful. So with that, thank you, all of our mods, Miss Sophia, Maui Girl, Mimi J2, Crystal G, Melissa, Hart, Four Sons Mom. Can't do this without you. Karen, Dylan, and I are so grateful for taking your time on, whenever you jump in. And I know you do it for a lot of folks, but by golly, you're the best, and we're grateful for that. Thank you to all of our subscribers and our channel members who keep it classy and above the waterline. All the other stuff, people are going to say and do things, that's okay. Hey, this too shall pass. Just keep moving. Don't look in the rearview mirror, and quite frankly, if they're angry at you, then you're probably doing something right. Hey, you'd be surprised, being a homicide detective as many years as I was, and still working for the Cold Case Foundation. I'm the director of law enforcement relationships internationally. So I kiss babies and shake hands all the time, including cops, not former cops, but cops who are on the streets today working. And so it keeps moving forward. And, God bless each and every one of you. Thank you so much for everything. What kind grandma has messed up the grandkid in the vehicle, looking for a flower instead of watching her grandchildren? Yeah, exactly, Lampole. Thank you so much. So with that, Doc, are you ready to go to Hawaii?
Me?
Yeah, here we go. You ready?
Yeah.
I'm taking you out. We'll see you on the next one, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Hard working every day. I'm stressed out 24/7, babe. No timeouts. Wish we could fly away. You and I go to our favorite place. Oh yeah. Make special memories together. I'll be your company now and forever. I say we fly away. You and me go to our favorite place. Feeling the sun on my face in Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. I need